Good morning. There you are. Good morning. My name is Alan Madden, Gadigal Elder. For my first song, married man, 10 children, 26 grandchildren, and 17 great-great. Yes, we did have TV. Just couldn't afford the bloody electricity. Born and bred in Redfern, the capital of Sydney. Aboriginal, black, Redfern, follow Manly. No. Rabbitohs. Welcome to country to me is always an honour and pleasure. Just to give you a little bit of an insight of where you are and who we are. As with all welcomes, firstly I'd like to acknowledge our First Nations and traditional owners of the lands that you may have come from or work upon, and pay my respects. To all our Aboriginal elders, all elders, past and present, also pay my respects. To all our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander brothers and sisters, from whatever Aboriginal or island nation you may have come from, welcome to Gadigal. And to all our non-Indigenous brothers and sisters here today, a very warm and sincere welcome to you to Gadigal. No matter where you've come from, whether it be across the seas, across the state or across town, once again, a very warm and sincere welcome to you to Gadigal. And as I've mentioned many times before, was, is and always will be Aboriginal land. Only three things shorter than that: coming, taxation and going. It's an honour and pleasure to be here today to welcome one and all to Gadigal. Gadigal is one of 29 clans of the Eora Nation. The Eora Nation is bounded by nature's own, the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Peene to the west and Georges River to the south. And in between those three mighty rivers is the Eora Nation. And in that nation, there are 29 clans. And the clan's land we're on today is Gadigal. On behalf of Kumari and of the Gadigal mob, once again, a very warm and sincere welcome to you to Gadigal. There's an old Aboriginal saying out there, I think it's very appropriate for you mob here today. They say, where there's a will, there's relatives. And as you travel across these traditional lands and waters, may the spirits of our ancestors guide, look over you and keep you safe. So once again, on behalf of Kumari and of the Gadigal mob, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to Coalesce Sydney 2023. Aren't you so excited to be here? So we are so happy to have you here. I'm Steph Yanaga. I'm your MC for the morning. And I just want to say that I'm so excited to be here with all of you, and a lot of my colleagues feel the same way. One of the great things about the DBT community is that you all feel so passionately about the product that you're using, and we really see it as a privilege to be able to work with you and to build products for you. So today we're here at Coalesce, and obviously Coalesce means to come together, right? So we'll have a great opportunity today to come together, hang out with other data practitioners, but also to learn how DBT allows us to bring our organizations together around data. So we have a packed day ahead of us. We have a keynote and some sponsor sessions in the morning, and then we'll move into some breakout sessions. I'll go into some more detail about that in a minute. So a few reminders before we get started. Please remember to silence your phones. If you have any questions, there are people, actually you'll see them, they're all lined up over here. They're all in purple shirts. They are there to answer your questions, and if they can't answer your question, they'll at least know who to point you to. And then the third thing is take this time to download the app. I personally hate downloading event apps, but this one you do need. This one will show you not only what sessions you have, but also where the sessions are located. If you look on the website, it doesn't show where the sessions are located, so you're going to be kind of lost. So I would recommend doing that now before we get started. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, to Snowflake, Fivetran, and the Mantle Group. We wouldn't be able to do this without you, and we're so grateful for the support that you've given us. And then last, I'd say, so I lived in Sydney for 2 years, and I learned that being ahead of time for everyone didn't usually work out in our favor. Usually, I think with the exception of Pokemon Go, got that first, very exciting. But today is another exception. So you all are actually going to be hearing a lot of these big product announcements before the rest of the general public, like almost a day beforehand. So we just ask that if you are really excited about anything and you want to post something on social media, please wait until 4:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. So don't worry about it, just set your alarm, 4:30 a.m., golden. But until then, if you could refrain from posting anything, that would be great. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Drew, co-founder of DBT and resident intern.
Hey folks, one quick word of administrata. Please download the Drew app. You can do that now. I'm Drew Banin. I'm one of the co-founders here at DBT Labs. I'm so excited to be with you here at Sydney for Coalesce 2023. This is my first time in Sydney, actually in this hemisphere. It's a beautiful city you have here. It's no Philadelphia, but if you've ever been, you would laugh. So if you're joining us for the first time, I want to say thank you so much for coming. If you were here last year, welcome back. Coalesce is such a special event. It's filled with great conversation, knowledgeable speakers, and new connections. So my ask for all of you today is to try to meet someone new. Say hello, share something you learned, ask someone a question. This community is so great, and it really is a pleasure to be here. So as a community, there's some questions that we need to ask and answer to really understand where we are as a community of practitioners. Like, why are we here, and where have we been? Where are we now? Where are we going? So we're here because we believe that data is powerful, and we want everyone in an organization to be able to wield this knowledge effectively. We believe that all data practitioners are fully capable of building mature analytics production systems, and that anyone can create and disseminate organizational knowledge. With DBT, anyone who knows SQL can build and operate production data pipelines. So we also believe that data builders still have a lot that we can learn from software engineers. And DBT brings these mature best practices from software engineering, like CI/CD, version control, and automated testing, to data in a way that was once controversial, but now is accepted as a pretty good idea. So we started building DBT back in 2016. Steph made a joke about me being the perennial intern. I met our CEO, my co-founder Tristan, when I was an intern at our previous company. And back in 2016, we imbued it with these very beliefs. So we have this viewpoint from 2016. We talk about data as SQL is code. It's a data asset. You should version control it. These actually predate the formation of the company. And so DBT treats every data practitioner like the skilled professionals that you all are, and we equip you with tools to create best-in-class data workflows. So the 7 years since then have been a pretty wild ride. This is a chart of weekly active DBT projects. So you can see we actually just crossed 30,000. So I joined here. You can see that. But I love this chart because it's a really good data visualization. You can probably see yourself on it somewhere, whether you were in the very beginning 6 years ago, or if you're just getting started, or maybe you're off the wall over there, and you're going to get started soon. We can't talk about DBT without talking about this community. So today we have 50 meetup groups across 27 countries. And I've been to a handful of these. I'd love to visit some more too. Great people, good conversation, and sharing best practices of this nascent product and way of working. Last, DBT users built 1.1 billion with a B models last month. And to put that number in perspective, I drank 1.1 billion flat whites since I arrived on Sunday. It's a very big number. It's a lot of them. So I think of a DBT model as it's a unit of knowledge, right? It's business logic. It's a rule. It's something that was once a fact in one person's brain. When you create these DBT models and run them, it's actually the expression of this knowledge and all of this business logic. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So thank you for trusting DBT with this knowledge. So we founded DBT with a set of these core beliefs. And those beliefs are baked right into the product experience of using DBT. Organizations of every size and every industry use DBT in production today. And in a way that I never could have anticipated 7 years ago, DBT has shaped what it looks like to do data work today. So there's a lot left to do, and we're going to talk about that today. But first, I want to talk about journeys, because this community is on a journey, and all of you on your own journeys. The DBT Labs, the company, is on a journey, and the DBT product is on a journey. And our goal is for these journeys to align and intersect so that everyone can get what they need. So here's what this timeline looks like. And back in 2016, we got started as a consulting company. So we were called Fishtown Analytics. Fishtown is a neighborhood in Philadelphia where I currently live, and I encourage you to come visit. It's a great spot. So in this era, we built the original versions of DBT. And we didn't sell the product. It was purely open source. We did consulting, and every time we hit a new problem with data in our consulting work, we baked that use case into DBT, which hopefully is why it feels so good using this tool in anger, so to speak. We built it in anger because data's hard. So we had no commercial business in this era. In 2020, the community was growing. We crossed 1,000 companies using DBT out in the world, and we just could not support the growth of the community and demand for the product as a tiny consulting business. So we went and we raised money. And after taking this venture investment, we ramped the team from 5 to 50 and then 100 engineers over the next 3 years. That was quite a wild ride, and I'll tell you about it maybe at the happy hour if I want to relive that. So as the engineering team grew, we matured our product experiences, right? DBT Core became more stable, well-documented, and more consistent. And DBT Cloud became hardened with investments in infrastructure and scaling and identity and authentication. So with these investments, DBT, which has always been a great tool for small companies, increasingly has become the tool of choice for the Fortune 500 as well, and everyone in between. Here's what a revenue graph looks like if you want to go out and build your own DBT labs. One important thing to note, this is in Australian dollars. Okay. So a lot has changed about our business over the past 7 years, but there are still so many things that feel exactly the same way as they did back in 2016. So I want to take some time today to remember the things that helped us get to this point and restate our commitment to them for the future too. It starts with sustainability. Our goal is to build DBT Labs into a sustainable and profitable business so that we can continue to be good stewards of this community for years and years to come. I care a lot about this. I care about this community. Many of you I will meet for the first time today. Some of you I probably met on DBT Slack or on a GitHub issue over the past 7 years. And if we were talking on Slack, I was probably up pretty late having that conversation with you. So we're really committed to this. I care about it. And it means that we need to grow and be profitable as DBT Labs, the business. But second, we remain committed to open source. At a time when companies are turning away from it. Open source drives standardization. And DBT has become the standard for data transformation across the modern data stack. With standardized tooling, it's easier to hire people and to be hired. You can take your skills with you across organizations or roles, and you can spend more time on the things that matter and less time futzing with homegrown tooling. So standards provide leverage, and that standard is powered by open source. So we remain committed to the Apache 2.0 license for DBT Core, and we'll continue investing in it with real dollars and real energy over the years to come. Speaking of open source, DBT Core, our last release was version 1.6, I think back in July. And this release shipped with 49 new features and 72 bug fixes, plus a ton of under-the-hood performance improvements as well. So we really are continuing to invest in DBT Core and open source in a real way. We'll continue to do so. One thing to note, we have our next version 1.7 coming out in couple weeks, call it. So third, DBT Cloud. We want DBT Cloud to be the best way to write, run, and operate DBT at scale. As an industry, we've seen about 30 years of commercial open source. And there are so many things that open source is good at, but there are many places where it falls short. These look like seamless user experiences, high availability and strong SLAs, and state and identity management. So this requires more than just open source software. And these are the kinds of features that we're going to be building into DBT Cloud over the years to come. So in sum, we care about sustainability and stewardship, open source and open standards, and innovation in DBT Cloud. And we can't do any one of these things alone. We have to do all three of them together, and we have to do it hand in hand with this community. So I zoomed way out, but I want to zoom us back in on kind of the core thing that we've been focusing on for this entire year, and that theme is complexity. So this is a picture of a DBT DAG. Maybe you have one that looks something like that. You'll notice there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in that DAG. So back in 2016, a large project was about 100 models. Somebody wrote in, I think on GitHub, and they said, my project's really slow. I have 100 models. I replied, what do you need 100 models for? But as more and more organizations, especially bigger organizations, scale out DBT to address more and more use cases, we've actually seen an explosion in the size of an average DBT project. And about 5% of DBT projects have over 5,000 models. So that's a lot of models. The size of a DBT project is not a problem in and of itself. But the problem is that each additional model adds complexity. And historically, we haven't had good tools for managing this explosion of complexity in DBT. So today in DBT, more code and more models means complexity. And the question is, how do we flatten this line and make it so that we can continue to build out our DBT projects and address more use cases without having our complexity spiral out of control? So when complexity is high, it's harder to author new models. It's harder to edit existing models without breaking downstream use cases. And reviewing PRs is harder and harder and takes longer and longer and can only be done by a smaller and smaller set of people. So we spent the last year talking to customers about this problem. And the moment we started talking about it, it was like a dam broke. Every data leader that I've spoken to is trying to figure out how they can address more use cases with better quality faster without letting complexity spiral out of control. So our team got to work. The result is a slate of new product experiences that we are so excited to share with you today. Now, managing complexity at scale is really an engineering discipline, and I'm on our product team. So what I really need to do is bring up an engineer here to tell you about the new product that we're shipping soon. But not just any engineer. This person, I met this person for the first time about 4 years ago. And so just as a testament to the power of open source and community, they were a community member. They used DBT open source. They had some questions about DBT, and I wanted to learn what they were working on. That person was Michelle Ark, who is now a staff software engineer here at DBT Labs. I'm very excited to welcome her up on the stage to tell you about what's new in product.
Great job. Hey, thank you so much, Drew, for the intro. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm a software engineer at DBT Labs. Since joining about a year ago, I've gotten to spend most of my focus developing and building DBT Core alongside this truly incredible community, perhaps even directly alongside some of you in this audience. I'm really so honored to be here with all of you today in beautiful Sydney, and I'm excited to share what's new in DBT. Let's start by taking a look at a super zoomed out view of the data development workflow that's at the heart of DBT. It'll probably look very familiar to you. It starts with writing and editing code, which is then tested and continuously integrated before it's deployed and monitored in production. And eventually, the cycle repeats itself. We build anew on top of data assets in production. But in reality, I'd be really surprised if your workflow is as clean as this diagram would like us all to believe. And so it's critical to have tooling to help you move through these phases and iterate quickly. Think an IDE to simplify development, efficient testing and continuous integration systems, robust orchestration and monitoring platforms, and a unified documentation experience. I'm excited to share some of our new product releases that will impact every part of this workflow, with improvements across the board to user experience, cost management, and iteration speeds. Let's kick us right off and speak to some of the improvements in the IDE. With the IDE, you can build, run, test, and version control your DBT projects from your browser. So first off, we've completely internalized dependency management in the IDE. In the latest version of DBT, you never need to run the dbt deps command, period. You provide the IDE with a dependency file, we manage the rest automatically. Second, and I'm really excited about this one, we've integrated SQL Fluff directly into the IDE, so you can fix style and apply formatting rules without interrupting your development flow. Next, the new Defer to Production toggle is now available in the command bar in the IDE. When it's enabled, the IDE will leverage production warehouse state when referencing unchanged models in a DBT invocation. That's a bit of a mouthful, but what it means for you is you don't have to waste long initial setup cycles doing a lot of setup to build the entire state of the world in your development environment before you can even start development. You just can get cracking a lot faster. Next, let's talk about CI/CD, continuous integration and delivery. CI/CD is a DevOps practice where code changes are merged and deployed on a regular basis to unlock rapid incremental iteration. And it's been a key component of DBT Cloud since its launch. We've rolled out a series of improvements that I think developers will really appreciate on this front. So first, what you're seeing here is we've separated CI from deployment jobs so that they're much easier to set up with default execution settings that implement our best practices out of the box. Second, with the introduction of deferral in CI, we can now diff between the state of the PR and production much more efficiently. So you should never have to waste a build or test on code that hasn't even changed. And in that same vein, if a user pushes up an update to a PR, DBT Cloud will automatically detect and cancel any stale in-flight checks, reducing costs and improving overall CI times. If you want to learn more about the latest and greatest about CI in DBT Cloud, please attend Joel's session later today at 4 o'clock, I think, over there. And on the deployment side, we've incorporated the new DBT retry command, so you can re-execute the last DBT job from the point of failure. This has been a very, very highly requested feature over the years, so it's been very satisfying to bring to life. Overall, this just saves you time and execution costs because you don't have to re-execute any unnecessary steps in a failed job. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk semantics. Last year at Coalesce, we launched the DBT semantic layer. The semantic layer was built to address challenges in creating and maintaining consistent definitions of critical business concepts, such as what is a customer and how do we compute revenue. Enthusiasm was high from the get-go, from the very first issue that Drew opened on the topic. But as we heard more and more from our users, we really came to understand and appreciate the complexity of this problem. And to that end, we joined forces with the team at Transform earlier this year, who had built the best product on the market by creating metric flow. The teams have been hard at work since February, and we're now excited to launch, maybe relaunch, the updated semantic layer, now powered by metric flow. Some key updates include support for dynamic joins, so you tell us your join keys, and DBT will do the heavy lifting of generating a semantic graph. Support for new complex metrics types, such as cumulative windows, ratio metrics, and derived metrics. And the power of the spec is really that you don't have to write precise, cumbersome SQL over and over again. In fact, metric flow generates performant and legible code, SQL code, on your behalf. And lastly, we've expanded our Access APIs to include support for GraphQL and JDBC in order to meet developers where they're at when it comes to consuming metrics. Okay, we can't really talk about semantic layers without talking about integrations. We have 7 such integrations with some of our BI partners. Let's take a peek at one of these by taking the Tableau integration for a spin. So here we are in Tableau. We're connecting to the dbt semantic layer server. We're opening up a data source where we can see measures and dimensions, opening up a data sheet. On the left, you can see those same measures and dimensions, and those are actually powered by the dbt semantic layer. They're just dbt metrics. You can use Tableau in familiar ways. You can drag and drop, slice and dice, aggregate measures over time, change the granularity, apply filters. And I believe this demo is making a custom dashboard, applying some filters, changing the visualization. Really, you're just using Tableau in familiar ways, and now it's powered by the dbt semantic layer. So we'll let this demo fumble through. Okay, while we're on the topic of integrations, I'd like to just provide a quick update about the state of our dbt adapter ecosystem in dbt Cloud, which continues to strengthen with the introduction of Starburst in dbt Cloud. I'd also like to welcome a new partner joining our ranks. We've been working with the teams at Microsoft to deliver 2 new adapters for Azure Synapse and Microsoft Fabric, both available in private preview in dbt Cloud. All right, that was just like a smattering of really exciting product and feature announcements. But I'd like to recenter us back to this idea of complexity that Drew introduced a little earlier on. It'll continue to be a big theme throughout the rest of this spotlight, and it's really been the lens through which we've been building through product, design, and engineering at dbt Labs over the last year. I'd like to share a quote from one of my favorite software design books, A Philosophy of Software Design by John Oosterhout. Simply put, he defines complexity as anything related to the structure of a software system that makes it either hard to understand or modify. How many of you have worked in a data system that sounds something like this? Maybe you've had to rely on a system that's complex and sounds like this. Maybe you yourself are the source of complexity and chaos in your organization. But in all seriousness, let's reflect on how this complexity tends to manifest itself in one such data system, dbt. We start off with a handful of models contributed by a handful of high-context contributors. More use cases start to pile on, more teams start to join in, and the model and the DAGs grow. This continues, people add models, metrics, seeds, you name it, until we're left with this giant monolithic project with developers contributing and trying to stay coordinated throughout it. Complexity manifests itself differently at different levels of the organization. The way it's felt as an individual developer is very different from how it feels when you're aligning and trying to collaborate across teams. And in total, this complexity sums up to introduce large operational costs throughout your organization, significantly slowing down velocity and hindering innovation. There are real growing pains from working in a system like this. I've experienced them firsthand as a software developer, and I've seen them play out countless times in data teams as a data platform engineer. For example, making a change that was once considered small, localized, low risk becomes a matter of hunting down potential owners of potential downstreams and transitive downstreams. You have to grapple through complex upstream dependencies that you've never even directly contributed to. And additionally, these massive monolithic deployments tightly couple teams to one another and become brittle to breakages at any point in the system. So it's for all of these reasons we're so excited to launch dbt Mesh, a new approach for building federated data products using dbt. dbt Mesh isn't a product, it isn't a feature, it's actually a design pattern. It's an architecture and a supporting set of new constructs that you can use to build a data mesh that is custom fit for your organization. It centers around a technique that's extremely pervasive across many engineering disciplines. When you have a large, complex problem, you break it down into digestible components. So here you can see we've decomposed a monolith into 4 domain-specific DBT projects so that developers, teams, and organizations can work in the system without having to be exposed to all of its complexity all at once. Prior to DBT Mesh, it wasn't really possible to do this kind of decomposition without giving something up, without compromising on a unified lineage or governance. And what's powered this unification under the hood for so many years is actually the familiar and humble ref macro. And we figured out how to naturally extend this ref abstraction into the DBT Mesh so that it works across projects. With a cross-project ref, DBT Cloud can now provide those same benefits of unification across projects. That means you can now split your projects into hub and spoke or mesh architectures to match your decentralized organization. Each team can maintain their own project and decouple themselves from the day-to-day operations of one another, but still reuse and build on top of each other's work reliably. You might be wondering, how does governance work in DBT Mesh? How can teams work independently, but apply consistent quality frameworks across the board? So to that end, we've released a collection of new language DBT features and constructs that emphasize on enabling structured collaboration. First, we've introduced access modifiers, very common in programming languages and now available for DBT models, that allow each project to intentionally mark which interfaces are public and available for consumption downstream in the mesh. Second, DBT now supports model contracts to guarantee well-defined, reliable interfaces that support versioning for smooth migrations and deprecations. So altogether, DBT Mesh makes it possible to federate control of data out to teams, but without losing visibility and governance. We're going to hear from a bit of a longer demo from our very own Jeremy Cohen. I'll just grab a seat here.
I'm going to show you how a set of developers can collaborate across multiple projects in the DBT Mesh pattern. As always, I'll be illustrating these concepts and workflows using our favorite fictional business, the Jaffle Shop, now enterprise scale and factored into 3 separate projects: platform, finance, and marketing. This cross-project lineage that you're seeing, each arrow represents a model reference across projects. We'll be taking a look at cross-project refs very soon. You'll notice some of these are public models shared with other projects, while others can be private or protected. These public models are the mature, reusable assets that enable dataset sharing with downstream teams. Those other models, the implementation details for one team, modularity within each, clarity across all. We have this orders model, which is public and has a contract enforced. What does this mean in practice? Let's put on the hat of the finance team, pop it open in the IDE, and develop in this model. I know there are other teams depending on the structure of orders. If I were to take away a column or change its data type, or even add another column that's unexpected, when I go to build it, I'm going to see a model contract error at build time. The contents of this model no longer match up with the explicitly defined contract. The goal: clear expectations for downstream consumers, without risk of surprise or breaking changes. I find out in development and in CI, not in production, when I've incidentally broken someone else's dashboard. Of course, if I do need to make a backwards incompatible change to this model's structure, I can create a new model version, like a new version of an API, and mark the old version for deprecation. Model governance by DBT within DBT throughout its development lifecycle. No other tools necessary. Let's stay in the finance team's project, taking off the producer hat and putting on the hat of a data consumer. In this case, consuming those public models available from the platform team's project. I don't need to build from scratch. I can leverage this work of the other team, who have already prepared for me models like stage products, which have a contract defined with a set of columns that I can rely on. I can use these models as my jumping off point, calling them as APIs. Let's go back to the IDE, this time going to the order items model. Here are my cross-project references, project name and model name. You can see that the dependencies are tracked, that I'm able to compile this model, and that these refs will compile to the production location of these upstream public models. We can even preview this data, and it all just works. Finally, once I'm happy with the models I've developed and I'm ready to deploy, I want a way to guarantee that this finance project's models always run after the upstream platform team's models. Now I'm going to show you a sneak preview of functionality coming very soon. Within dbt Cloud's easy-to-use orchestrator, I have a wicked simple built-in way to trigger this job when the upstream project's job completes. That's it. Coming soon to a dbt Cloud near you.
Oops. Okay, thank you, Jeremy. If it's not obvious, Jeremy's a theater kid. He's a really fun PM to work with. It keeps me on my toes. Okay, stepping back to this visualization of mesh, I really want to emphasize how critical data discovery is for this architecture to succeed in practice. If I'm a developer, how do I know what public models even exist in the mesh? What their contracts are, what their quality standards are, what versions are available? We realized we really needed to take dbt's project documentation capabilities to the next level, and so we're excited to announce dbt Explorer, a new cloud experience for discovering, understanding, and sharing dbt projects. And critically, it was built with dbt mesh at its core, understanding the importance of offering the right context to the right person, not too much, not too little, so they could get their job done. Some key features include an enhanced search experience, resource detail pages that include dynamic context about model and test builds, their execution times and statuses. And perhaps most exciting is our new lineage visualization that extends across projects. This is an extremely visual product, and so the best way to showcase it is just by jumping right into another demo. I'm gonna go here. Okay, let's say we're just developing in the context of a single project. We want to modify the orders table. We can search for it. We can pull up its lineage, any definition details. We can inspect the code that defines it, as well as the columns that produces. We can take a look at test coverage and understand real-time dynamic context of the test historical success rates. If we built exposures that are shared with other teams, we can get a sense of how they're used downstream, as well as their historical test statuses. We can take a look at lineage, all the way up through the source. This works across all the familiar dbt assets like metrics. You can click into one of these, total profit. And the revamped lineage experience is really at the core of the new dbt Explorer. But what really brings dbt mesh to life in dbt Explorer is that it provides an account-level view for all the overarching projects and their dependencies across the mesh. If you're contributing within a single domain, you can zoom in and see a detailed view about all the assets that are relevant to you in that moment. But if you're building on top of work from other teams, you can explore what assets they've published to the mesh. All right, is that it, dbt mesh? There's actually one more thing. We know that many of our developers prefer to work using their favorite shells, scripting languages, and code editors. They may be interested in some of the features in dbt Cloud, but find a browser-based IDE way too restrictive. So striking this balance is really what motivated the new cloud-attached command line interface. It's the same dbt CLI that you know and love, but it provides the best of both worlds. The power of cloud-backed development with the flexibility of using a terminal and code editors of your choice. It comes baked with dbt Cloud functionality natively, including support for cross-project refs and auto-deferral. Cross-project refs to work in a cloud-managed mesh. And besides the user benefits of using a familiar tool, but that's supercharged, enterprise builders will appreciate being the hero for their security and governance partners because the Cloud CLI brings with it cloud authentication, managed core versioning for ease of installation and upgrades. Oops, sorry guys. And simple self-service installation. Okay, now let's recap on what we've launched to help you manage complexity and collaborate at scale with dbt and dbt mesh. Model contracts, versions, and access modifiers to manage interfaces between contributors. The cross-project ref to collaborate and build across federated dbt projects. dbt Explorer to intuitively navigate and explore DBT projects, whether you're working in the mesh paradigm or not. And the DBT Cloud CLI, allowing you to contribute to large or small projects in the way that you're most comfortable. We've been able to put all of these ideas to the test over the last few months through a beta program, working with some of our largest and most sophisticated enterprises on DBT Cloud, like Siemens and Fifth Third Bank. At Fifth Third Bank, DBT Mesh enabled making their data mesh architecture a reality using a single platform. We're so excited to officially launch DBT Mesh, cross-project refs, DBT Explorer, and the Cloud CLI into public preview in DBT Cloud. And job triggers, which Jeremy hinted at, are coming soon. Contracts, versions, and access identifiers have been added to the DBT language spec and are generally available in open source DBT. We hope you try them out and share your feedback. So thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to get into all the details throughout the rest of this event. Thank you.